to the cloud, safer.
All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the MaxLove Project podcast. Today we are with Alexia Hall, our registered dietitian at MaxLove, and we're here to announce as well as cover a really exciting topic at MaxLove, as well as introduce a new coursework that is now in our MaxLove Project Connect. It is called Personalized Fierce Foods, and it is focused heavily on the idea of, or the science of nutrigenomics. And we're here with Lexi to kind of introduce what nutrigenomics is, as well as cover what you could get from the course if you take the course, as well as how this could apply to you and your family and your child. So it's really exciting. I think we've worked on this for probably, I'd say, over a year, right?
I was going to say four
Yeah,
because
it's
we are
been,
using data from 4 years ago. So
yeah.
that
And I think
we
it
started
was
with.
it was around last year, or maybe even 2 years ago, where we started working with families on this. Getting the reports, getting kids genetic testing done to see, what kind of foods are specific to that kid's body.
It
I
was
know I got,
2022,
yeah, yeah. And
2022 when we did our first 10.
and I got introduced to it because I did it for our daughter, Camila, who is battling a brain tumor. And I thought it was just so interesting to be able to look into, we as a mom or a parent, when your child's diagnosed and how important food is, how important supplements are, how important, quality of life measures, everything we advocate for at Max Love, and kind of just seeing what she needed the most. So I thought that was, just amazing and really helpful, as a mom to be able to say, I don't really need to focus on this. I need to focus heavily on this based on, the results. So I know Audra's done it for Max. I know a lot of parents are looking into the science of this. And I think something, we've worked at Max Love now is trying to make this as accessible as possible. And we've done a lot of vetting. We've done a lot of vetting in the sense of what tests can be most helpful, what strategies can be used, to help really focus in on utilizing the data in a productive way. So that's what we're going to touch on today. And I know, just to begin as an intro, so the science is nutrigenomics. The topic is nutrigenomics. And Lexi, do you want to first introduce maybe like how you're educated in the space? Because I know we all know
Yes.
you're a dietitian, but I know you've added, layers onto that to really be a credible source in this space. So I don't know if you want to start there and then introduce what is nutrigenomics.
Yes. Yes. I, along with you, Samantha, am so excited about this project that we've begun. Yeah, I've been studying it for years, but has its foundation in culinary medicine, which is just where it's at, in my opinion, in terms of where we know our healthcare is going to. So I am incredibly excited about this as well, our personalized nutrition container within MaxLove. So my name is Lexi Hall. My professional name is Alexia Hall. If you search for me that way, you'll be able to find me. I originally got a very conventionally based dietitian license. I was trained at UC Davis Medical Center, and I was in a very conventional atmosphere. But I always knew that I wanted to go an integrative and functional look at things through an integrative and functional lens. I wanted to be able to incorporate lifestyle medicine. I wanted to be able to incorporate culinary medicine into my practice as well. And so I sought out what I determined at the time was to be one of the most evidence-based programs that there were for integrative and functional dietitian to follow after they had their original license. And I found IFNA, which is Integrative and Functional Nutrition Academy, that's based on IFM, which is the outfit in Cleveland that is used for all of the MDs who then want to incorporate an integrative and functional lens into their project. So it's the one that's available for dietitians. It's a 240 unit additional certification that goes on top of the RD, and it had a component in there for culinary for nutrigenomics, and that just lit a fire for me. And then I followed that up with obtaining a nutrigenomics counseling certificate from 3x4 Nutrigenomics, and so was able to study it that way as well. And I've since counseled with my patients. I've done close to 150 of these different Nutrigenomics reports on different patients over the last several years. And so I know that there are a lot of colleagues out there that are aligning themselves in the same direction because the information is so valuable. So to answer your second question, Samantha, what is nutrigenomics in its most basic terms? It is how what we eat and the environment that surrounds ourselves, how it affects how the DNA, our written instruction manual for how to build body parts, how to build us, how that DNA, that written instruction manual is expressed in the body. And so the DNA, it builds proteins in our body. So it builds things like red blood cells, white blood cells. It builds things like hormones, and it builds things like enzymes. And it's specifically important to the oncology community because those enzymes and those hormones and those little bioactive things inside of our body, they make a difference in how we respond to chemotherapy, how we respond to food we eat, how we provide all the tools that we need to thrive, or we have a deficit in some of those tools. So it's incredibly valuable information for the oncology family to learn.
No, that's helpful. And I think that's such a valuable statement, right? We all want to know how, like, we hear things, that's bad for you, or this is good for you, that's bad. And then to be able to like dig deeper and say, like, just applicably, how bad is this for me personally? I think that's incredibly valuable. And I know this science is technically pretty new. So it's something that is emerging, I would call it. It's something that, like you said, a lot of practitioners are now going like, this is probably something I should be trained in because the data is so valuable. Can you just touch on, how new is this science and where it came from or how it was discovered?
I was actually surprised to learn that it's a little bit older than I thought, but you're absolutely right. When we're talking about a science that emerged in the 1980s, that is relatively new in longevity speaking. But this idea came about in the 1980s where they wanted to put together an international consortium of different researchers at different universities around the world to really understand how the human body was made. And so they started trying to figure out if they could sequence DNA. So if they could unravel this instruction manual that makes us, and they could identify all the parts. And so they coined it the Human Genome Project. And it actually was thought about in the 80s, but it didn't get going until the 1990s. And then it didn't complete until 2003. And even in 2003, they said they were about 90% of the way there. They had sequenced and identified all of the instruction manuals, the DNA sequencing for 25,000 genes that make up us. And then it wasn't until later that they were able to actually complete that remaining 10%. They just needed advanced technology for that. And then what's really cool is once they were able to identify all these things and they were able to understand the basic biology of how we're built, they were able to do all kinds of association studies. And so they were able to say these people with this genetic sequence had more of a chance of having this disease or condition than somebody who didn't have those specific genetic traits. And so they were able to make those association studies that then could not only predict disease risk, but also predict what medications would work better for them. And to your point, the whole oncology community is just bombarded all the time with if you're you got this type of cancer or that, you need to take fish oil, or you need to take quercetin, or you need to take cannabis, or you need to take this or that. And the study of nutrigenomics came out once the Human Genome Project was done and once all these association studies started happening, saying, okay, this person is a great candidate for curcumin, but this person is going to suffer because if they take pharmacological doses of curcumin. In culinary medicine, it's fine. In food, it's fine. But if they're going to take hyper doses of this supplement, this is not a good idea for them, or it is a good idea for them based on their personalized DNA genetic variances. And so that nutrigenomics term was coined around 2003, but it's had the last 21 years of study of association studies that have been able to tie together enough data that is saying if you have this specific genetic variant, then this may be a good choice for you, or it may not.
Which I think that we can apply to, like in a childhood cancer family, will be aware too. The same idea happens in tumor types, right? You can be this mutation responds well to this mutation
Yes,
responds well to that. It's kind of the same idea on how things have been studied. So if you have a certain SNP, we'll talk about SNPs, I guess, in a little bit, that you're more susceptible to XYZ. So I think that's
exactly.
also kind of a similar idea
Yes,
into what this kind of data could help with. And I appreciate too just the idea of, a lot of families throwing in the kitchen sink, so to say, as when it comes to supplements. And that's what this data could really help with too, is,
yes.
just instead of throwing in the kitchen sink, you can pull from the cabinet into focused, supplements that your child's body is asking for. So that's helpful too, just to kind of give a snapshot into, what this data could help with. And I'd love to touch on, I know MaxLove is root for the past 13 years that MaxLove has existed. We've been heavily focused on the fierce foods approach, saying that a fierce foods approach to eating, at the very least, improves quality of life.
Absolutely.
Yes. And I would love to, how has that basis for Max Love and how we approach nutrition, how has nutrigenomics added on to that, and how has it been developed to where we are now in branching off into nutrigenomics?
There is absolutely a basic healthy diet for everyone going through an oncology process. I call it the foundation oncology diet. As quality of carbohydrates as possible, as nutrient dense of a diet as possible, in order to give your body all the tools to help your immune system be the strongest that it can possibly be, that can minimize side effects and help you go through treatment longer, help you get to the end of treatment. So that is what we started teaching, back in 2013, and we've got 10 years of that under our belt. With and armed with that knowledge and armed with all of our experience, we were able to start classes and we were able to develop a cookbook that then helped a wider community. We were able to reach a wider community than just the 30 or 40 people that we had in an individual class. And then as the data improved about this personalized nutrigenomics, we loved it. We wanted to access it. We wanted to access it for all of our families. And we thought, let's start small and start with 10. So once I had my certifications in order, that was back in 2020 and 2021. But we got this idea and then we rolled it out in 2022, where we actually ran 10 of our families through our nutrigenomics program. And so we sought out a provider that would be able to do the laboratory assessment of nutrigenomics. And we put a lot of thought into which nutrigenomics company we were going to use. And there are about 20 of them out there that I would put my faith in, that they do good manufacturing processes. It's just a swab in the mouth that you then put on a Q-tip and then send back in the mail, and they analyze it and give you a report of what different genetic variances could affect what you eat, and then also how your body responds to the nutrients that you're giving it. And we settled on one particular company. That company is 3x4 Nutrigenomics. And the reason why I like them so much is twofold. Number one, every time they make a recommendation of what is an appropriate nutrient for you or what is not, they provide ample PubMed scientific journal articles that support association studies and why that is a valid intervention, that why that is a valid recommendation. And so armed with that information, we ran 10 families through the program. And with that, we realized that it was kind of expensive. And we thought, how can we provide this information to all of our families and not just 10 a year? At first we were thinking, gosh, can we roll it out to 20 next year? And we're like, no, we want to roll it out to everybody. So then you and I, Samantha's got these incredible literary skills and website skills. We rolled out or we worked on, we are just rolling it out now, our Nutrigenomics container, which is an educational platform that provides the families with the most important parts of the Nutrigenomics report. It gives really the basics of the language around nutrigenomics. And so, just like you were talking about SNPs earlier, it describes what a SNP is, which in basic terms is just a change in the genetic variant. There's a certain one that you're born with, but the certain one you're born with could have a change to it that you're born with that affects the way your body responds to certain nutrients. And then we go into all of those terms, like SNP, we go into the term DNA, we go into the term genes, alleles, epigenetics, really important terms to understand when you're understanding the basics of a nutrigenomics report. And we tried to make each one of these modules something that's consumable and easy to manage. So we tried to keep them to 15 to 20 minutes. And so we did the basics, and then we delved into 4 specific areas that directly impact oncology families. And that's detoxification, oxidative stress, methylation, and choline metabolism. And the information that we can gain from those areas was put into all of this information in those classes to help you understand it better when you get the report back. Because I know these are all big terms that you need a basis to of understanding in before you can be able to apply this information that you're given. But we thought we don't want to stop there. We want to add a 5th lesson onto there, which represents all of our learning from the past 10 years. We put in a culinary medicine one. So it's not just what information you're now supposed to do, but it's actually how to do it. And here's the recipes and here's the tools and everything else of how to get your kid to eat these things. And so we kind of feel that that's a critical part of this education, but now we're able to roll it out to anybody who wants the information. And then we thought we'd go a step further and we would, I am the dietitian right now that MaxLove has that can provide you with additional counseling on that genetic report if you want. But we also enabled it so that you can get the report yourself, so that you can get this report, you can go through the class, have a better understanding of it. And we're also, other dietitians have expressed an interest in signing on with us and being able to give this information to our family as well. So we're trying to open it up so that the information is accessible to everybody.
Yeah, no, thank you for laying that all out. I think that's, we've always valued at MaxLove education, right? So everything you're saying with the lessons in what is epigenetics, what is nutrigenomics, what is choline, right? And how is
Right.
that important to cancer, detoxification, oxidative stress, and methylation. We have all of that information that Lexi's put together in little videos, accessible to watch. That's all free. So everything education based is all free for our families. The only prerequisite is that you have to be, battling a childhood cancer diagnosis and you're free into the space and you can learn about the science. So I think that's a large part of the work and a really big opportunity to even learn about, what is this and could it be applicable to me? Is this something that I want to learn more about for my family, for my children, etc. And then the added layer too of getting Lexi's help. So we have an avenue within the space of how to get the testing done on your child, which is very simple, but that's all laid out in the course as well. How to, get the report. And then also if you need that extra support into focus or what does this report mean when you get the report, you'd have to like cross-examine, like we talk about the pathways that are important for cancer diagnosis, but the report's going to give you so much more than that. So we also have the avenue of like getting Lexi's interpretation of your child's report and having that extra layer of expertise and saying, we know we're dealing with a kid, we know we're dealing with a childhood cancer diagnosis, so how can we delve this data even more specific to the child? So we also have that avenue listed out in the space, and that avenue is self-funded at this point. We do have a scholarship program for anybody who feels that they need that support. We also have a waiting list there, but that's something else that's also laid out in the course of there's different avenues you could take with this information. So everything is free to learn more. And it's very valuable information. I wish I had it when we got the report. I remember just looking at all the information being like, where do I begin? Like it's a lot of data. It's a lot of really valuable data, but it's also that filter into, what should we focus on? What does this mean, especially when you're facing a diagnosis like cancer? Um, so I think it's incredibly valuable to even just educate yourself on what all of this can mean. So
You raised such a good point too about it's really important to have the education to provide you the baseline to understand the report. That's another thing that we love so much about 3Explore is they do have a beautiful report that's really
mhm,
self understandable, and it really does things with the language of color, saying these are your most important things to focus on,
mhm,
these not so much. So helps you fine tune what your focus areas are. The one caveat that I would give the report that is not fantastic is that this company is providing this information based on association studies. They're saying somebody with this genetic variant should be focusing on this nutrition and this lifestyle area. But they also do list supplements on there and they list dosages. But
mhm,
what they don't know is they don't know your child. They don't know their height, their weight. They don't know what medications they're on. And so some supplements can be contraindicated with certain chemotherapy regimens that a child may be on. And so you can absolutely take the diet and you can absolutely take the lifestyle suggestions from 3Explore directly. But if you're going to add supplements to your child's diet, it would be good to review them with your
mhm,
practitioner, with your child's team, with your dietitian. Yeah, and that can be me or it can be someone in your own area and one of the other dietitians that we're also onboarding onto our MaxLove platform so that we can provide this to more people.
mhm.
But you cannot go wrong with culinary medicine. Cannot. You cannot cause harm with it, which is so beautiful.
Yeah.
But supplements are pharmacological doses of things that can help modify your genetic expression. And so it's much larger than you would get in the amount of food. So it's important to know
Mhm,
and get, practitioner help with
mhm.
supplements before you add them.
Exactly. No, and I
Yeah.
I didn't even touch on the idea of the last lesson being, you can know all this information, right? You can know all like obviously every kid should probably eat broccoli, right? Like that's
Yes,
an obvious, but
absolutely.
then how do you get your kid to like the broccoli? How do you get your kid to try the broccoli? How do you get your kid to like the broccoli? That's our
And
whole last lesson, probably the most important of the course of tying it all together, right? If you are having issues or your child's having issues detoxifying, how can you support that part? So that's our last lesson of what foods should they be focusing on? And also, here's a list of recipes that are more detox focused and methodologies and expertise that Lexi has numerous tips and tricks on how to get your child to even pick up the food or try the food. So I think
smell it, lick it.
yeah, that's immeasurable too. Of, we can talk all day long about what's good, what's bad, what we should do. But if your child doesn't want to, or your child's not open, like that's a whole other battle. So I think that's also a huge part of the coursework that I think is immeasurable too, of, how the hows of to do any of this is immeasurable as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. I think that when, what types of things that a parent can walk away with in terms of getting the nutrition report, the nutrigenomics report, and then doing the coursework as well, is an understanding of not only what nutrigenomics is and how can it affect yourself or your child, but how can it affect food, but also lifestyle and things just as basic as the water you're taking in. I
Hmm.
had a particular client where they were testing high in a heavy metal, and they couldn't understand that why were not other people in their same household unit testing
Hmm.
high for heavy metal, because we discovered that the arsenic in the water coming into their home was just 4 parts per million over the threshold of what is considered healthy. And nobody else in the home was testing high for arsenic, but one of the persons was. So then we did nutrigenomics and discovered that this particular person had a genetic variance that just wasn't able to break down the ring structure of arsenic.
Mm-hmm.
But the other ones didn't have this genetic variant. So their body was, even though it was only 4 parts per million above, their body was hanging on to it. And so once we knew that, our intervention was to get a reverse osmosis filter and to install that in the house and make sure that we were lower than the threshold, but also kick up all of the culinary medicine tips for how, like cilantro, for example, eating fresh cilantro on top of things is a great binder for heavy metals. And within a couple months, we were able to get that out of that person's system. So that's just one clear example of
Mm-hmm.
how nutrigenomics can really assist in places like that. So it
Mm-hmm.
affects nutrients, it affects your environment. And what I always say too is that I don't always say this, I didn't coin this term, but some other researcher did, is that genetics loads the gun, but epigenetics, which is the diet and lifestyle that you surround
Mm-hmm.
yourself, actually pulls the trigger.
Mm-hmm.
So this nutrigenomics report can point out potential issues that may or may not be happening with you. And then you can do a lab test and find out. So you can, if you're like on a chemotherapy drug like methotrexate, which is going to shut down your body using a very important B vitamin, folate, you can see if you already have issues with folate anyway. And that might, before you were to start this regimen, might instruct you to get to sufficiency in folate before this begins so that you're not going to be terribly depleted by the time you end therapy. So those are really helpful things that you can learn and take
Mm-hmm.
away with the
Right.
nutrigenomics report.
And I think that, yeah, that's a great way to put it of, just the focused, I think that,
Yes,
and that also brings peace of mind in some ways, is like knowing that you're doing, you're really focused on what is personalized to your kiddo. So I think I'm really excited about this. I think that this is going to be a great resource, and I hope anybody listening, also feels empowered by this. This is all free and accessible to families. All you have to do is go to maxloveconnect.org. And in all of our self-paced courseworks, there is also a Fierce Foods one, which is just basic Fierce Foods. And this is kind of like Fierce Foods 2.0 of, taking into the idea that you can make this into a catered approach to your child and what they're going through and what they might need more support in as they battle an illness or even in survivorship. This is so important too, of helping the body recover, helping everything that your child's been through, of supporting them in that way. I think is another subgroup that has seen a lot of, I don't want to say success, but I think benefit from utilizing
benefit.
something like that of,
Yeah.
just supporting the individual body. I don't know if there's anything you'd like to add to anybody listening and, advocating. I know both of us are able, you reach out to us with any questions or
Absolutely.
guidance. We also have a peer supporter in the app too. If you have questions, she's always open to meeting individually, seeing what you might need or the emotional side of everything as well. So there's a lot of support, and we're really excited to bring all this information into the most accessible way because I think that that's one of the huge parts in this journey too, is finding the right people or finding the right information. A lot of this journey is scavenging.
Yeah.
That's the word I would put, is scavenging for the right information, the right people to help. And I think that this coursework is a really good jumping point for families considering anything to do with nutrition. So
I
yeah.
just love the fact that MaxLove has really made a commitment to the fact of to the opportunity to provide all of this information for free. And it's because of all of our families who have donated
Mm-hmm.
and worked hard over the last 10 years fundraising that has allowed us to have this platform that allows us to disseminate this information
Right.
out. And so the path that we've been on for the last 3 years of trying to figure out how can we get this information out in a cost-effective way to as many
Mm-hmm.
people as possible has come to fruition.
Yeah.
And I did want to say one last thing, and that is that Samantha pointed out that it was me that had done all the work, but Samantha has been a huge part of this entire process all the way through. So she's being very humble when she
Mm.
gave me credit for it, but she and I developed it together. So
No, thank you for that. And I think you're right. It's so important to realize that um like our time does cost money, and you're right, like this is kind of like, it feels very good to like be able to bring something now. Like this has taken a long time just
yeah,
because we are so diligent about almost accumulating everything that we've done at MaxLove. That's what this coursework feels like to me, of just like bringing everything together that MaxLove has been doing for 10
yeah,
years, right? We got the classes, the recipes, the science, like it all feels like it's coming together in this coursework, which has taken time because we just have had so much, we've done so much work in the space. So I
yeah.
think that is a very good point into, kind of just the everything coming together. That has taken time, and it finally feels that we're ready to put it out into the world, which is also really exciting. So I appreciate you saying too just how much time that this has taken. And I'm hoping,
Yeah.
and I'm also feeling, just incredibly hopeful that this will help a lot of people.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Absolutely. And I really feel strongly that it will. I mean, I think about some of the important parts of what this can do. So just as a basic line, a lot of people out there in the community are telling you that a ketogenic diet is appropriate for your child. Well,
Hmm.
this report, there's so many different levels of ketogenic diet out there. This report has a huge section on how a child will respond, a person will respond
Hmm.
to fatty acids. And so if you have a whole bunch of genetic variances that don't allow you to process fat very well, then maybe a therapeutic ketogenic diet going all the way to 90% fat and just 10% in carbs and protein is not appropriate for you.
Hmm.
You're not a candidate for it. And so you may need to go with a lesser degree of ketogenic diet. It also, has even more benefit in terms of, like we were talking about specific nutrients, but also, what type of tests that would be beneficial for your child to seek out
Hmm.
in terms of not just B12 and different types of fatty acid metabolisms, but omega-3 checks and things like that. And also, it might even direct you to check out thyroid really well, because that
Hmm.
is a common problem that happens later in life. And learning if you have a susceptibility now will be really helpful to identifying the symptoms of that later. So this information is really valuable.
Yeah, I
And
mean, I can share personally, I took the test, and just even one biomarker, like when you get your labs done, and there's some things that are like above normal, like mine was homocysteine, which is right, like an inflammation marker, right?
yes, but it also indicates,
B vitamins.
yeah,
So
B12.
I
Yeah.
needed to take methylated B vitamins, and I literally saw a before and after of like homocysteine's up, and I knew it was because I have a half MTHFR
Yeah.
SNP. So I'm heterozygous for that. So that means B vitamins, I'm not able to process them as well.
Get the
And
active form as well.
yeah.
Yeah.
So then I took a B vitamin, and I literally saw a before and after of it going down. So it's almost like you're able to really be
Measure.
proactive and,
Yeah.
have the data to support why you would do something. And then you're able to see your body respond in a positive way. So that's one example for me that I saw. And I was like, wow, like this. Now I have like my whole family like asking me and trying to get the
Getting the
test
data
too.
too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because
Getting
it's
the data
really like
too.
sometimes you're just like in the dark about, what is good, what's bad. And this just really has a lot of support behind it of actionable things that you can do. So that's
Yeah.
one example, one personal one I can
Yeah.
share as well.
I love what you just said too, because we this getting the nutrigenomics report is one tool. And
Hmm.
then that being able to direct your lab testing is another tool, because
Hmm.
this is like the potential for something happening. Let's see what's actually happening in the body. And I think too that it's just as important. The whole process that Samantha's talking about right now is methylation. And
Hmm.
we'll go into detail in education component about what methylation is and how it affects the body. But in its most simplest terms, it's the process your body uses to turn things on and off. And the nutrients that you get from food contribute to this whole methylation process. And so, one of the things this report does is it talks about your possibility of how much risk you have with methylating or under methylating. And we know with the oncology process that it's really important to have a balance. So the whole scenario that Samantha just elucidated right there is that she knew that she could use homocysteine as a biomarker to see how well she was doing with supplementing. But once that number is down, once that homocysteine down, she doesn't have to take as much anymore.
Yeah.
And she shouldn't take as much anymore because she doesn't want to over methylate, because that can be dangerous too. So that balance is really, really important. And then following it up with these lab markers, it gives you direction on how to set your goals and to know if you're meeting them or not.
Yeah. So it's to me, it's immeasurable information. Like I feel empowered, to be able to be more proactive. And that's my hope for families too, to feel that they are more empowered, more impactful to their child's, to their journey. And that's all listed out. And we have our support with Lexi too as an option. So yeah, is there anything else, just to conclude, our little intro here, but again, too, you're always welcome to reach out, either if you're watching this on YouTube. We're available on social media, in the app, anything like that. Any questions that come up on how to get started, we're always here to help guide.
Yeah. One last huge thank you to the families that support this community, because it's the fundraising that we do is funded a lot by the families that are in our community. And it's because of them and all of the donations that have been made and sought out from other members in the community that have allowed MaxLove offerings to be given to the masses and to be able to be open source, so we don't have to make people pay for them. And last big thank you. We're super excited, all of us are, to be able to offer this, and it's because of you. So
that's beautiful.
All of our community. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, thank you, Lexi. And
all right,
we'll definitely have in the future some more episodes on podcasts. Like as people maybe get into the coursework, maybe we'll have little episodes on SNPs and what they do. Because I think all of that is fascinating, of just like continual education as we learn more about, the science of nutrigenomics, and because it's ever expanding and it's ever, these little points that we're saying of things that you can do or foods you can focus on, supplements, like that's all growing and developing. So we'll definitely keep this conversation going as well.
Absolutely. I mean, with 3x4 Nutrigenomics, there's 25,000 genes that they've sequenced, but there's roughly 140 on the report that they feel as though there's enough evidence to give a recommendation for. So that number continually grows. We'll be able to continually add to our knowledge base as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, anybody wants to join, just go to MaxLove Project, MaxLoveConnect.org, and that will be linked to below. So that's where you can find all this information. And again, reach out with any questions. And so thank you, Lexi, and we'll keep this conversation going.
Sounds great.
Okay.